It seemed like a perfect match. Penn State needed a wide receiver. Malachi Fields had a connection to Marcus Hagans, the wide receivers coach, and that still wasn't enough. It's time for a transfer portal reality check.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Seyko. I am your host of the show, and help me welcome back a very special guest. That is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting expert, but also knows about the transfer portal, talks Florida State, Wisconsin, Auburn, you name it. He's connected all across the college football nation. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This is another live episode, so I encourage everybody to be a part of the conversation. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Malachi Fields chooses Notre Dame over Penn State. Brian, you followed Notre Dame for a very long time, covering college football, but being a fan of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So you have a pretty good understanding of what's going on here, period, with your connections to recruiting and everything else. This seemed like a perfect match, and it still wasn't enough. I have to think that NIL plays a factor in here. Our discussions about how Penn State's just not a place for wide receivers to routinely succeed. What, in your mind, was the overall factor here? Because I think there needs to be a reality check at this point.
I don't know what it was, because all the points you made in the beginning of the pod would make it seem like it's an easy transition. Maybe he wanted to go do something different. Different part of the country. That's the only thing I could figure, but it's still not that much further to South Bend. So I don't know. Did some checking. My buddy said this had been in the works for a while that I spoke with. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, didn't know that, but maybe it's the NIL. Notre Dame and Penn State are not the teams that traditionally throw out a lot of NIL, but Notre Dame has changed that during this season. They started paying more for specific guys. It's a little more player to player. But other than that, I don't get it. Penn State needs receivers, and they're really good, and they got an NFL quarterback returning for next year unless something changes. You tell me.
Yeah, it seems like a really good setup at the surface level, right? Drew Allard needs wide receivers. Maybe a Malachi Fields is looking at this and saying, it's too crowded. Kyron Hudson already committed, but I still don't think that's maybe a good enough of a case, because Penn State can still run more 3 wide receiver sets. And I think the target share, the responsibility opens up, because my biggest concern going into next season is how do you replicate, or how do you even get a semblance of what Tyler Warren gave you in the passing offense? Because that's not going to be, I say replicated, but it's not going to be, because he gave you Heisman contender-like level play as a tight end. And Khalil Dinkins and Luke Reynolds, as good as they are, as much potential as Luke Reynolds has, those guys aren't going to give you Heisman-like capabilities at tight end. And Kyron Hudson is a good receiver, is a step in the right direction, but you still need multiple options there. What are Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton doing right? So my point is that the responsibilities, the snap counts, the target share is going to completely open up. So Malachi Fields could have been a number 1 option in this offense.
You tell me, man. I'm a little bit confused on it. Penn State shouldn't be that hard of a place to get any position. That crowd, the tradition of the school, I'm sure they could always go with more tight ends. Like Notre Dame does that a lot too, ironically. But
they'll run a lot of 2 tight end sets next season, yeah.
But if you're going to beat Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, etc., the best way to do it is to not have to go 5 to 10 yards at a time. You need big plays in those games, because going the length of the field against UGA's defense, which Notre Dame's got to do here real soon, and like Penn State is going to either play Notre Dame or they're going to have to play Georgia. Either one of those is not fun. Tyler Warren's great. He's not going to beat those teams by himself. You need somebody to get over the top. Georgia and Notre Dame, all 3 of those teams have the same problem right now, because Georgia's receivers couldn't catch a cold if they were naked in Siberia. But it's just bizarre to me that Penn State can't get them. I don't understand it. I'm hoping that we get a little clarification on it. Once the portal is done being opened again after the title game, we get another 5 days for the team's title. If Penn State doesn't get a big name receiver, at least by their standards, they may not go pay $3 million for the top guy or whatever. But if they don't get a really good receiver to come back with then at that point, I would have a much bigger problem with Higgins. At some point, you just got to try something different. Because they may win the title this year. It's possible, but they're going to have to do it against the odds because the receiver room. If they had Malachi Fields this year, Penn State might be the favorite to win it. They're that good, but they don't have anybody that scares you outside. And again, tight end's great, but it's not the same burner outside.
And I think that's where Penn State's passing offense has benefited. Either Tyler Warren gives you a hero type of ball game, or he commands a double team, commands all of this attention on defense, and then it gives enough of a cushion for a Trey Wallace, Julian Fleming to an extent. Amari Evans can sneak over the top, right? So it creates for those guys, but that's the thing. You need a Tyler Warren to create for them. They're not creating on their own. So that Penn State, this is why there's a portal reality check in a sense. Maybe it's an NIL reality check too, because I don't think it can't be recruiting, because Marcus Hagans recruited Malachi Fields to Virginia. He wanted to go play for him as his position coach. And I get it, things change, right? This is Hagans' second season at the helm at Penn State. So there's going to be things that are lost in translation over the course of time. So I know that Notre Dame is getting at least a little more competitive. Penn State's definitely getting a little more competitive with its NIL, but it still feels like it's not enough. And I've said that Penn State still has to take care of things in-house. Singleton, Allen, what are they doing on defense? Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant. They just got Zakee Wheatley, which we will talk about on this live show. He is returning for the 2025 season. Drew Aller. That's going to take some NIL. That is going to take a lot of NIL money to keep some of these players. And then what about Kobe King, right? So you've talked about this, you've mentioned this, but help put it into perspective a little more, Brian, is that it costs a lot to bring in a top wide receiver after quarterback. You've said it, the two highest paid positions in college football, if you want a superstar, wide receiver and defensive tackle. Does that still hold true?
Yeah, I think those are, because it's just due to numbers. You could throw OT in there too if it's a left tackle.
Okay.
Depends on the year, because there are very few of those. Very, very few. Those guys don't turn themselves into the portal very often. But defensive tackle and like the true number one receiver, they change games. I mean, I don't know if you saw the post that was out on X earlier. I don't know how much validity there is to it. I don't know the contract details, but Mensa, the quarterback from Tulane, going to Duke for 2 years for like $8 million was reported. And
Duke.
That's what I said.
I saw it. But Duke being an NIL powerhouse in football.
That's what I'm saying. Like, look, the two quarterbacks that Notre Dame took over the last 2 years, and even Cam Ward at Miami, none of them made that money. So maybe Duke is maybe there's just one guy's like, you know what? I got 2 years to live. I want to see this kid play. I don't know. But that changes the NIL landscape. Maybe Notre Dame made a crazy offer to Fields, because they haven't exactly killed it at receiver of late either. They've been pretty bad. So it might have just been the NIL offer. Without knowing the full details, that's, that needs to be brought into the light. But at the same time, again, they have to get over the hump and make other teams respect what they have at receiver and change the box. Could you imagine what Katron and Nick would do if they, at least another 5-10 plays a game, there was another guy sneaking into the box? It would just be insane. So it's truly amazing what Penn State's offense has developed into this year. They've done a good job. Like, beginning of the year, it was a little iffy, but you got towards the middle, towards the back, they could turn it on pretty good and running or throwing. And that's without a receiver that was a really scary guy. So again, I'm surprised, because I would think somebody at some point would be like, if I go to Penn State and play in that offense, they got a good line, they got good running backs, got quarterback coming back, I can be the number one guy. And I still hold that by the end of the whole portal process, after the title game, and again, those teams get 5 days afterwards for their players to jump into the portal, Penn State should get at least one really good player. Maybe it'll be just as good or better than Fields. I don't know. But Malachi, like you said, play for Higgins, recruited by him.
Yeah.
You would have thought that would have been the fit. Sometimes it just works out differently. Maybe their guy ends up being somebody from Washington State. You just never know.
Yeah, and I've always said that the transfer portal is a fluid situation. Look, we're sitting here live on December 23rd talking about this. More bowl games are going to happen. More names have entered the transfer portal as a result of just a couple of games, but this will continue to happen. The portal does not close till the 28th, and Penn State can continue to recruit even after that December 28th date. And there's also the spring transfer portal window. Now, I know you want to get into a program and prepare and practice, but there will be those spring camp battles, and names are going to continue to shuffle. So this isn't the end. But the way that they just kind of continue to miss, whether it's, look, I'm hearing that they're back involved in discussions for KC Concepcion, but they're probably at the bottom of the list of 5, 6, 7 different teams. I don't think they really have a legitimate shot there. They miss on the likes of an Eric Rivers. It's good to see that they get Kyron Hudson. I would liken him to a Julian Fleming, but they need that superstar caliber player, because they don't have that in next year's offense outside of Drew Aller. You lose Tyler Warren. Trey Wallace is not a superstar. Amari Evans is not a superstar. Kyron Hudson is not a superstar. And then you're just going with a collection of these guys. And then what does Nicholas Singleton do? What does Katron Allen do? So it's going to be Drew Aller and what supporting cast that is really a difference maker, a guy that can take over games, because you need that if you're going to win a national championship. So Brian, to kind of wrap up this opening segment with you and then check in on the comments, get questions and feedback from the audience here. What does Penn State need to do? Do they just go make the splash? Do they say, okay, budgeting be darned, we are going to make a competitive NIL offer, even if it seems over budget with what we're doing for a KC Concepcion? Do they need to do that?
If they made a concerted effort, let's just say, and Notre Dame wins out because they paid an extra $100,000 or something, it is what it is. So you got to use that same concept with Concepcion. Now, if I remember right, Alabama's involved there, which means
yes, they are.
That's going to be rough.
It's
because they want to pair somebody with Ryan Williams, which by all means.
Yeah.
I've seen Ryan Williams live. There aren't many things like that, but that's not going to be like Alabama's not going to get outbid. If especially after this past season, their boosters are angry. So Penn State's going to have to deal with some of that. You might have to, like, for what you think a player is worth, you might have to pay double, literally, because somebody else will. The market is the market. Mm-hmm. Penn State may have to adapt to it and do that. And I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but that's the way I would lean.
Does that alienate players? In a sense, and you're connected to Auburn. That's kind of the sense that I got from Julian Fleming comes in, and I relate this to the Keandre Lambert-Smith going into the transfer portal. I think that, if you go and make a bid for a wide receiver, and you already have, Penn State has a collection of wide receivers that they can turn to, but we're talking about game-changing superstar. Trey Wallace is your best available option. Kyron Hudson gives you something. It's a step in the right direction. It makes your core better. But then if you say, all right, we're going to go spend $1 million, that's what we're talking about. Auburn, I bet they made at least $1 million offer to an Eric Singleton Jr. from Georgia Tech to get him in the fold. That's what it takes. So does that alienate your team to an extent? Wide receivers, any other position group?
It can. Keandre did really well at Auburn. I wondered if that would transition well, but he did. Every situation is different. I don't know what to tell you there. And by the way, I think $1 million's a low number. If I was to guess, I'd bet Eric Singleton's really good. He's going to get paid to play at the other level, one step up too. So he's not much fun to try to tackle, jet sweeps, reverses, and all that. So I'm guessing he got more than $1 million if you count in bonuses and all the different things. That's my guess. But the bottom line is they were not going to be outbid. Auburn fans are not happy either. They were 5-7. After spending a ton this past year in the offseason. So that's the market thing again. Penn State might have to throw out some crazy numbers because it's not a cool school to go play receiver on. It's just not. So, but Notre Dame just beat them for a guy, and that's the same thing. Like Notre Dame might be worse than Penn State. So it's really kind of befuddling.
That's going to do it for our opening segment here. Brian, thanks so much for the time. Links to your work will be down in the description as we get a transfer portal reality check, and hopefully things at least move in the right direction. It's not over, fluid situation, and hopefully we get to chat with you again very soon to talk about just that.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
That is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting expert. So as we pivot here, Penn State got some good news. Zakee Wheatley, Penn State safety, is going to return for the 2025 season. So they miss on a wide receiver. They at least gain a significant boost to the defense, which was much needed as he could have gone off to the NFL. We're going to talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a win. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. There's many different options: passing yards, rushing yards, tackles, field goals made, you name it. You can not only bet on who will win the game, but all of those prop bets as well over at FanDuel.com. And if we look over at FanDuel.com, you can see the lines for the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State versus Boise State. Penn State is a heavy 10.5 point favorite, minus 400 on the money line. If you're thinking Boise State, plus 310 on the money line. Total is set at 52.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And today's episode is also brought to you by Homefield. Homefield is the go-to for premium collegiate apparel. And football fans, the college football playoff is now into the quarterfinals and then eventually the semifinals. The championship, college football, has never been better. And to make sure that you're ready, we partner with Homefield as our exclusive apparel sponsor of our show to bring you the Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. As I mentioned, Homefield is the go-to for premium collegiate apparel crafted with comfort in mind, featuring vintage designs that will make you the envy of any tailgate. If you're watching the show live, this is a Homefield t-shirt. I had to get one for myself. With over 180 schools to choose from, including Penn State, there's something for each and every fan, and not just football. Basketball, hockey, wrestling, you name it, for Penn State. But the real MVP is the Homefield Platinum Football Box. This is your all-access pass to exclusive gear for the 2024 season, with 3 never-before-seen items from your school. Plus, VIPs get even more, like a special hat and the 2024 Platinum Pass for early access and discounts all season long. So don't wait. Head over to homefieldapparel.com and gear up today. And you can use our promo code WEARE24, that is WEARE24, at checkout for 15% off. If you need a last-second gift idea, homefieldapparel.com with promo code WEARE24 is the place to be. Again, 15% off at checkout over at homefieldapparel.com. Let's make this season unforgettable. And today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. You got to download the Game Time app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. And Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, because there's no better way to make great memories during the holidays than going to live events in person with friends and families. You'll create those core memories, and Game Time has introduced a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And let's look over at Game Time. You can go to gametime.co in your browser, or you can go to the Game Time app. And I have the Game Time picks pulled up right in front of me for the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State versus Boise State, and all the top deals are sorted for me. You can get a super deal. Main sideline, section 111, row 32, all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. $439 per ticket. If you're just looking for the lowest priced available ticket, Game Time has those too. Terrace level, it's upper level at the Fiesta Bowl, section 421, row 4, all in pricing per ticket, $235. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And we will wrap up here with the good news for Penn State, and that is Zakee Wheatley returning to the team. Also, check in on your comments. Thank you so much. If you have any other thoughts here, as we will go through another segment to talk about Zakee Wheatley returning to the team. If you have any questions or reactions to the transfer portal, it's been rather quiet for Penn State. It's heating up for Ohio State. Fun enough. Thank you so much for checking out the live show. We have a wide receivers coach who has shown zero ability to develop talent in business. Marcus Hagan certainly inherited a not ideal situation. It's been an uphill battle for him. I think Hagan's needs the 4 or 5 year plan, because the recruits, I'm looking at a Tyseer Denmark, this class of 2025, which has 4 high quality players with a lot of upside, but they are going to need time to develop. And then that's going to give you an answer of whether or not Hagan's is the answer at the wide receivers coach for Penn State. Missing on Malachi Fields is a punch to the gut. Not afraid to admit that. It's not a good look. But if Notre Dame, the rumor is Notre Dame offered a significant amount of NIL. And if Penn State is either, if all things are equal there and Notre Dame wins out, that's an issue. But since we can't confirm or deny that, I mean, at that point, Hagan's is not responsible for what Penn State is able to offer in NIL. But I can understand that, well, because of the previous relationship, that should, for everybody, it's different. Some people are just looking for an opportunity, a change of scenery. Some people are looking for a pay raise, right? This is the age of college football. There's so many different factors now involved. The best leaders are the best teachers. Hagan's at least has, he's definitely rebounding from what it was over the summer. Recruiting was a struggle. He's turned things around so far. But I like the direction the wide receiver room is headed long term. But people want answers now in 24, 25, not 27, 28. That's a long time away. But when I think of the players that are committed now and they turn the corner 26, 27, I know that's not the answer that people are looking for. But long term, Marcus Hagan's is in a good situation. Didn't you have us potentially losing 3 games? If that comment was in reference to Brian, I had Penn State going 11-1 in real-time game-by-game picks, 10-2 over the course of in my preseason preview for the team, and then changed the USC game after watching the Trojans a little bit. Thought they would be better, and Penn State ultimately did finish 11-1 in the regular season. I feel this is a sign of efforts internally that we don't hear about to bring as many players back as possible. Yes. So Penn State is committed to recruiting high school. They want to start with high school recruiting first, build the foundation, and then get complementary players through the portal. It's not going to be free agency. It's not going to be a bidding war. So I think that Penn State's NIL is strategically designed to bring back a Drew Aller, because what do you think that costs? All right, we're talking about wide receiver. We're talking about price tags. What it's going to cost to recruit a wide receiver, quality wide receiver out of the portal. Quality defensive tackle, 2 positions that Penn State really needs for the 2025 season. But they also just retained a quarterback that could have gone off to the NFL and made some NFL money. He would have been selected in the first round. Maybe not the number 1 overall pick, but Drew Aller was quarterback number 3, according to the draft experts, if you will. Different experts started to move him up as a top 3, top 4 quarterback. That is a first round pick. So Drew Aller is sacrificing money that he could have made as a first round pick to come back to be hopefully the 2026 number 1 overall draft pick, but he's going to need some compensation. Then there's Nicholas Singleton. Then there's Katron Allen. Then, Trey Wallace could technically go off to the NFL. Does he get a pay raise? What about an AJ Harris? Does he get a raise to not go into the portal because he still has eligibility and he's progressively turning into a superstar game changer? Zakee Wheatley just declared that he is coming back for the 2025 season, right? Kobe King, Zane Durant, and Dennis Sutton. Some people aren't convinced that Abdul Carter's going to the NFL. That takes NIL money. So, I do not blame Penn State. I would want Penn State. I am okay with Penn State making sure that it keeps the players around and the ones happy that are already in the system and have been in the system for 3-4 years. because you know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get from players that you have worked with for the past, couple of years, few years. And so how they fit into the team, the chemistry and everything else. I don't think transfer portal, I don't think free agency in college football works for programs. And it's certainly not going to work for Penn State. You can get a player to complement, but to build a team, that's not a championship winning formula. You have to do both, but it's not a championship winning formula. Seems like another year of not getting help at wide receiver. It's not over. It just doesn't look good. It kind of hurts in the moment. It goes, like I said, more players can go into the portal. There are names that we don't know that are deciding to go into the portal at this time. I can't make predictions. I can't go and say, look at player from Washington and say that they're going to go into the portal. It makes sense. And somehow they end up at Penn State. We don't know. This is a day by day situation. We'll keep having these episodes to react to it, right? Whereas the transfer portal got all these teams that spend like crazy, I'll tell you, watching Penn State in the playoffs. It's interesting. The market for NIL and for the transfer portal is only going to increase. This is not good. GG's, Hagens, see ya. I really think it's an NIL issue because they got Kyron Hudson. They got Kyron Hudson from USC. College football is turning out to be a disaster. Yeah. It's certainly morphing into minor league football. Not that it already wasn't, but now that you have NIL, the transfer portal, honestly, the NFL has way more structure. I mean, of course, because those are contracts, those are careers, but the players, college football players have so much control. You could play at a school for 4 different years and continue to make more NIL along the way. You could upgrade your landing spot or just continue, right? Could start at a group of 5 school and then move up to another conference and then move up to the Big Ten or the SEC and just kind of keep, taking that step forward in your career. And there's no limitations. There's no transfer rules. There's no, because the NCAA continues to lose in court. When does the portal close again? December 28th. You just need to have your name in. And I think playoff teams actually get an extra few days. I don't know all. I just know that December 28th is the actual day. I heard that Bo Prevula got $1.8 million in NIL. I'm not sure if that's the number or not, but just what I heard. So it was reported by On3 that he got $1.5 million over 2 years. Missouri worked out an agreement, so that's $750,000 per season. Good for Bo. I hope he stays at Missouri. I hope he becomes the starter. He's getting into a quarterback competition, but he's not going to earn that money unless I imagine there's provisions. That's not all guaranteed. I think that's a great, that's why James Franklin and Bo kind of looked at each other and said, it is best for you to go into the portal now, land somewhere and get situated because you are missing out on opportunities to go get your worth. He can start, clearly he can start. He's going to be in a quarterback competition, Power 4. He's going to make some good NIL money on the side. Did you say people think Carter is coming back? Yes, I would say a select few people, but not everybody is convinced that Abdul Carter's off to the NFL. Don't forget about Tyseer Denmark and Peter Gonzalez. Don't forget about Josiah Brown. Peter Gonzalez and Josiah Brown are recovering from long-term injuries at different timelines, if you will. But all 3 of those guys, it just takes time. Marcus Hagens is playing the long game more than he is the short-term game. We are not based on the transfer portal. We are recruiting more and bringing in a few from the portal. That's just it. That's just how Penn State operates. But you would like to, under the circumstances, it might seem necessary if you have an NFL caliber quarterback coming back that you need to go get that perennial game-changing type of player, especially when Tyler Warren is going off to the NFL. Like, you can't bring Tyler Warren back. He's out of eligibility. There's no NIL offer that brings him back. So you got to do something to go get a player that is somewhat close to his caliber. I'm not saying go find your next Heisman, Travis Hunter, Tyler Warren type of player, that an out-of-position player contending for the Heisman. It's not a quarterback or a running back. It's not what I'm trying to say, but you need to go get somebody that can take over games. Not every game, but somebody that can be a game changer. And right now, I don't see that with Kyron Hudson and Luke Reynolds in the present. Maybe long-term that can change. Khalil Dinkins. Nicholas Singleton can take over games, right? Him and the combination of Katron Allen, those 2 together can take over games, and they might not be back for Penn State next season. Let's talk about a player. So thank you so much for contributing to the conversation. Let's talk about a positive here. Zakee Wheatley coming back for another season. Could have gone off to the NFL. This is where NIL is being utilized to make sure that Zakee Wheatley gets some compensation by giving up a year that he could start earlier in the NFL. I mean, that is a huge victory for Zakee Wheatley to come back for Penn State, because this is a defense that needs work if they're going to be a national title contender. Same thing with getting a playmaker on offense. But the defense, Abdul Carter projected to go off to the NFL. Zane Durant denied. Dennis Sutton still have to make decisions. A Kobe King. Tom Allen going into his second season needs playmakers. Penn State already lost KJ Winston. They're losing Jalen Reed because Jalen Reed's out of eligibility. So the safety room looks thin, but then Zakee Wheatley comes back into the fold, and there's potentially a captain. There's a captain on defense. You get the turnover king from, spring football, training camp, all those things. And I know Zakee Wheatley hasn't been that player that is forcing all those turnovers. He's come up big in crucial moments. It might not necessarily be the quantity of play, but it is the quality of play. I will also say this, that Zakee Wheatley, I think there's a misconception around what kind of player that he is, that, he can only intercept passes. He doesn't really do much of else. Zakee Wheatley, one of the leaders in tackling on this team. Both Jalen Reed and Zakee Wheatley have led the team in tackles. Zakee Wheatley has become this complete safety for Penn State. And James Franklin has talked about how he has taken that next step forward, that the light switch has flipped on for Wheatley this season. So there is still better football for Wheatley to be had. So by him coming back, he is going to be one of the best overall playmakers, not only on defense, but I think the team. He's going to be a veteran. He's going to give you that playmaking ability, that game-changing ability. And I think Wheatley can still get better than what he has shown us. So that is massive for Penn State in a safety room that is not clearly. Now, I do like the defensive backs overall, because A.J. Harris, superstar in the making. I think he can be a first-round pick. Zakee Wheatley, if he continues to get better, right, might be a day 2 pick. We shall see. I'm not a draft expert, but that's where, if things continue to trend well for him, that could be an option for Zakee Wheatley. But you have Harris, you have Wheatley. Dejon Lane is somebody that's probably going to start next season. They're going to continue to run a 4-2-5. Maybe they go get a linebacker in the portal. They're looking at Kendal Rogers. If you don't know that name, that's how Penn State can continue to run the 4-2-5, where you have Wheatley, you have Dejon Lane, who I think is ready. He's ready to start. I don't know if he'll be that all-star playmaker right away because he's still young. He still needs to develop. But you have 2 starters at safety now. And then go get just that third hybrid player. That's what KJ Winston was supposed to be, that linebacker, because he's so good at tackling. And that would have been nice this season, right? KJ Winston's tackling ability. But Kendal Rogers is that. So that's the player that I'm kind of keeping an eye on here. Oklahoma State transfer. He's going to command a lot of attention in the portal. If Penn State can land him, honestly, everything else be darned. Wide receiver, I'm serious when I say that. It would be nice to go get another type of playmaker, but maybe you can rely on your defense, and Tom Allen can put together another top 10 defense. Hey, whether you think so or not, objectively speaking, Penn State's defense is top 10 this season, and a Kendal Rogers out of the transfer portal gives you that for the team. But they have to be able to secure that commitment. So that's one player to know if you don't know about already. Defensive line. Zane Durant, denied Dennis Sutton. There's just a lot. There's so many question marks. There's so many what ifs for Penn State. But if they check all of the boxes, Zakee Wheatley was one of them. This can be another championship contender in 2025. And they are presently in 2024 going into the new year. Zakee Wheatley is huge. The defensive backfield is already set. You just need one more difference maker to really make that an elite group. A.J. Harris, Jalen Kimber should be coming back. I don't think there's any. He has another year of eligibility. So you have 2 veteran starters at cornerback, and then there's Zion Tracy, there's Cam Miller. Heck, they could move one of those guys to safety, and then maybe it's not necessarily a need in a Kendal Rogers. I would like to see them get Rogers because I think he's better. I just think because I think he has superstar capabilities. I mean, he was all conference as a freshman. He really, really talented. He's 6'4". He's a linebacker hybrid safety, and he's 6'4". So he's not a match. There's no mismatch. He is the mismatch. Wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, he can keep up with any of them. So maybe that's where Penn State's NIL efforts are focused, rather than saying, instead of overspending for a wide receiver, why don't we go get that extra playmaker on defense to really make this group elite? because Drew Aller is going to give us a lot. We like what we have at tight end. We're bringing back Trey Wallace. We got Kyron Hudson. Let's see what they do with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, because they have options to go to the NFL. Offensive line's in great shape. So maybe that's what Penn State's doing here. Zakee Wheatley, one player down, definitely more to go here in this case. It's going to do it for this live episode here. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. I hope everyone has a safe and healthy and happy holidays. Spend it with friends and family. There's going to be more coverage, more discussions over, the next weeks with the Fiesta Bowl, with more transfer portal news as it happens. Fortunately for Penn State, aside from Jerry Cross and Bo Pribula, there haven't been a lot of exits. I know there haven't been a lot of entries, a lot of new names for Penn State, but there's also not a lot of departures either. So think of it that way. It's because teams are seeing it where a bunch of players are going into the transfer portal, and Penn State has never had that issue, has never really had that issue. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, being a part of the conversation. If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. And I will be talking to you very soon about not only Penn State football, but Penn State wrestling, Penn State basketball, and so much more here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to each and every one of you. Have a safe and healthy holiday.